I found myself on this beach, like setting. And as I looked over the horizon, I could see what looked like a sun spear rising up. And I looked at it. It was the only thing in sight or in my observation then, in my focus then. Um, and I looked at it. And as it went across the universe, or as it came towards me, I could see it coming, but only in stages. It was here, then here, then here. It actually went up here, then here, then here. And as it came towards me, Mira, I rose in unison with it. Right, my hands. I rose in unison with it. And
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the channel within. I am Mira, and today I have Eugene Braxton here with me to talk about his remarkable NDE. Eugene has 50 years of experience with direct experiential research in NDEs, consciousness, and the architecture of the afterlife. Hi, Eugene, and thank you for being here with me.
hi,
Welcome.
Mira. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to hear about your NDE because it is so deeply layered and just very profound. So, do you want to get started with the the day of the NDE?
Uh, yeah, we can. Let me just read you one quick quote. It's about the NDE.
Mm-hmm.
It's from my book. The NDE is a thought-actuated, symbolic, nonverbal, dimensional realm. The NDE has an order. It has several sequential stages, a clear and orderly structure, repeating patterns, a beginning, middle, and end, which makes sense and are easily seen when examined as a whole single event, instead of some randomly occurring, meaningless, misunderstood fragment of some murky afterlife memory. And that's a good place to begin. And so it is a sequential thing where this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Memory plays a part. Uh, so you want to know about the day I had my near death?
Yes, and take it away from that and then into the NDE itself.
Okay. Yeah. I was and I should begin by saying that I had psychic experiences as a kid, thousands, 12,000 out of bodies from age 6 to 16, all kinds of dreams, lucid dreams and nightmares and out of bodies would be interwoven together. I'd have an out of body, then a nightmare, then a lucid dream, then a regular dream, falling dream. Uh, and so that started at 6. By the time I was 14, I was kind of an expert at both the dream world and the out of body. And the dreams can take you to the out of body. And the near death is a spiritual out of body. So the near death happened at age 15. I was well prepared because of all those out of bodies. Um, and then um, I've had these psychic experiences ever since, almost every kind, heavily. But when I was 15, I had the near death. I was at a youth group swimming lake session, the youth group church thing with the other kids in our class or in our church. Um, I played a lot of sports, so I jump off this dock, just like you see in the commercials, and jump straight up. And like a diver, I came straight down with my feet pointed down. And one of my left foot got stuck in the muck. I could not get out. Um, I swam on our school's water polo team and the competitive swimming team, as well as the lakes and stuff in Ohio, and even waterfalls where we live, dams, waterfalls. During a flash flood mirror, we'd go out and swim. So I could swim well. So I jump off this dock, get stuck in the muck, up to the knee. Um, I held my breath for as long as I could, uh, and I could not yank free, even though I was a weightlifter, basketball player, and all that. I could not yank free, held my breath as long as I could, and then suddenly, when I let the air out, uh, I sucked in like what would be like maybe 2, trash can gallon, uh, trash can filled. It was filled to the like a trash can of lake water, just vacuumed into my mouth. Um, I fell down on the bottom of the lake. When I fell, the muck of the lake came up and then covered me like a cold death blanket. Um, I looked above to see if any of my friends would see that I was missing and come down and get me, but no one ever did. Um, I could slowly feel uh, my heartbeat slowing down. It slowed down to a rate of about one every 12 seconds. During this time, I could feel and the same paralysis happens in the out of body. I could feel the paralysis starting at my feet, just like it does in an out of body if you're fully awake. I could feel it at my feet, slowly creeping up, almost like a spider web. You could barely feel it. But I kind of recognized those paralysis symptoms because the OBE has similar effects. So the paralysis slowly creeped in. I could feel the organs in my body, especially from the neck to the waist, slowly shutting off. And even though I was 14, and I didn't know where the organs were, I knew automatically that the kidneys just went. There goes the liver. The lungs went. The lungs went out, and they went off softly, like you would blow out a candle. That softly. It didn't hurt at all, but I could feel it, and I automatically knew that my organs were shutting down. Uh, the My level of consciousness, how awake, how aware I was, began to lower into a dream consciousness, where a thing and time slowed up too. Those two things are important when your level of consciousness changes and the time changes, or the perception of time changes. And we'll get into that later. But time slowed down, almost like dream time, dreamy time, sleepy time. I was still awake. I was paralyzed by this time up to the neck, uh, fully paralyzed, really. I could see, but only straight ahead, and I could hear. And so the eyes, heart, and ears were all working, but I couldn't move at all. I kept looking on the side for someone to come and get me, but no one could. Uh, the heartbeats got dimmer and dimmer until suddenly it stopped, and I heard a large boom, which people hear during out of bodies. Uh, I didn't know that other people heard that too, but I heard the boom, and then everything went black. Approximately 15 to 22 seconds later, I regained consciousness in like the way a lotus flower slowly opens up. And I woke up after death um, in a Vitruvian Man gyrosphere. I was inside of it. And as this sphere dissolved and disintegrated, my spirit body solidified. So I was fully awake, but in invisible spirit body form. And as the spirit dissolved, my consciousness awoken and solidified. That was in sequence too. I call that the realization of time and space because I knew that I was alive, like I think, therefore I am. But I didn't know what space I was in until I looked down. I was about 8 feet above my body. I looked down and saw it there in the muck. I didn't have any feeling towards it. It was almost like a statue or a mannequin. But I knew it was me because I could see the knee still stuck in the muck. And I realized that I was in the time of death or the afterlife. So I realized that I was dead, yet I was still alive. I was super happy. And right at that moment, there was a lapse of consciousness. I suddenly appeared somewhere else. And when you're ever having a spiritual or dream experience and you have a lapse of consciousness, that means that something may have occurred between where you were and where you went. So always watch out for those brief lapses of consciousness. They happen, and there are reasons for them too, which involve memory. So I get reconsciousness after death. I awake in my spirit body, and it was teeming. I could see it teeming like a fizz drink as it solidified, kind of like on Star Trek. Um, Super happy that I was still alive, although I was dead, and I realized that. Then I woke up and found myself floating in a life review room. Let's see, do I have a picture of that? I can get it later. I was floating in a life review room, and it was a circular band, uh, which was about 25 feet across and maybe about 10 feet deep. Remember in the carnivals when we would get into that rotating uh, carnival ride and then you'd stick to the sides? It was about that size, a little bigger, but the dimensions were the same. And it's as I was in the middle of it floating, there were three screens in front of me. Also, Mira, there was, as one side of this library room rotated to the right, the other side rotated to the left. The outer bands rotated one way, the inner bands rotated the other way, which means a lot too that we'll get into. Um, Woke up in the life review room. I saw three screens, and there were moving pictures in the screens like this, where I could see in between them uh, everything I'd ever done, said, or thought um, simultaneously. And my minds could comprehend that because the mind that we have now is our conscious mind. But in the dream or out of body world, you're using your subconscious, which is the normal conscious mind of the invisible spirit body. So we have a dual nature, one physical, as you know, and another spiritual. And that spirit body, it's an actual duplicate of us, has its own mind. It's a subconscious mind, the one that looks after us and everything we do and protects us. So when people have near death, they're operating in a subconscious way. That's why they can see far away or see 360. That's why they can know automatically, because that is your subconscious mind's natural state. You can float easily just by thinking about it. You can go side to side or to China. And that has a lot to, we're going to get into that too. But so the spirit body has its own natural conditions and laws in the world that it exists in. I was in spirit body form. I was in the middle of this life review. Three screens. Uh, there would be flat screens to us. Everything I said, thought, and did, even when I was by myself. Um, During this life review, I was asked three questions. What have you done to help yourself? What have you done to help others? And do you believe in me? Um, I felt that was God asking that question, and he knew the answer was yes. And then the scene changed after that. Although, Mira, during that life review, on the side, there was like a supernatural authority figure who would be like the Son of God, the secondary figure that comes after Buddha, that comes after God, was exhorting in God's behalf that I be allowed to get to the higher realms, which would be heaven, to get to the higher heavenly realms and continue on. Once I said that I believed in him, there was a slight lapse of consciousness. That's always something to look out for. I was on a beach, just like in that movie Contact. I found myself on a beach just suddenly, and I accepted that. In that realm, things will happen that you'll just let happen. And you won't interact with it, but you will interface with it. Um, and that's a merging and melding ability that you do with people, places, and things. And that's a product of the out-of-body experiences. Once you develop your dreaming ability, then the dreams can produce an out-of-body, especially through a lucid dream. You can literally have an out-of-body by planning a lucid dream. And I found myself on this beach, like setting. And as I looked over the horizon, I could see what looked like a sun spear rising up. And I looked at it. It was the only thing in sight or in my observation then, in my focus then. Um, I looked at it, and as it went across the universe, or as it came towards me, I could see it coming, but only in stages. It was here, then here, then here. It actually went up here, then here, then here. And as it came towards me, Mira, I rose in unison with it. Right, my hands. I rose in unison with it, and there were three lights. The first one was orange, just like the sun, which turned into a red in the intermediate stages, and the red would then turn into a white light. Now, all of these lights had different effects. Uh, I was looking at a sun sphere, just like they see in the Muslim afterlife traditions. They see spheres that are representative of God or an image of God, or uh, the lights often precede the vision of God for a few good reasons. So the orange rays, just like the color orange does, healed me from physical, emotional, and any mental scars. Now, I was only 14, so I didn't have a lot of baggage. But they brought me back to full health, rejuvenated, and energized everything. I was fully clean in all three ways: physically, mentally, spiritually, um, especially health wise. Then the red sphere, and it became red without me seeing it. It was simply red. And again, I rose up and was about maybe half a soccer field or half a football field away. And my full attention was on this thing. And as it non-verbally communicated with me. And the red lights were the ecstasy stage, where the near-death brings primal ecstasy. Usually, the UFO abduction almost always brings primal fear. And we can get into that later, too. But this red light produced waves, undulating waves of like rapturous primal ecstasy, or orgasmic even, where they were so strong, Mira, that I had to subtly watch what was happening. Because for the spiritual realms, it was almost doing it too much. Although it was the dawning of God and God's forgiveness that I was going through. He forgives you before any kind of judgment. Um, so the red light was the ecstatic feeling that you hear monks and mystics and priests talk about. Um, and it was almost overwhelming. I fully watched that because in those spiritual experiences, you want to have like a Spock-like disposition where you're watching something without any emotion. So you can fully receive and perceive what you're intently looking into. And after that, that's where the merging comes in. And I don't know if I said it, but the out of bodies produce merging. Once you have one or two out of bodies, in the out of body, you'll begin to merge into things, especially if you want to know its essence, identity. Um, so the red waves permeated every cell of my body, also recharging me, but more with the forgiveness of love, of God's love. And that is where people have that marriage and that union with God. It's not the full one, but it prepares you, just as the next light, the white light, would prepare you. Now, as I went up through these lights, my spirit body deviated and changed. It became finer and finer as I went higher and higher. After the white lights, I would become solidly invisible, and uh, and then I would become just only thought. So I went through the red lights. It was super, almost overwhelming. Uh, what people would call love, but what a researcher might see in a different way. So I was looking for that angle too, even though I was only 14. This is different than anything I had ever experienced, although I knew it was an out of fire, but it was a higher spiritual one. In the near death, the first half of the near death experience, and most don't, only 1 in 4 remember anything, and only 1 in 10, the world authorities say, make it to the white lights. So mainly because of memory. And there are several memory issues I've found, and I'm working with the International Association for Near-Death Studies now on those memory problems, which they couldn't and didn't fully address. Um, 1 in 10 see a white light or get to the white lights. 1 in 4 remember anything at all. And we'll go over the memory issues later. So I get out of the red lights. Spirit body is disintegrating more. I go into what we would know as a cloud-like fog or a white cloud. I went into the whiteness, and the white lights were the strongest of all the lights, Mira, and had the strongest after effects. All the lights have after effects, but the white lights had the strongest. And the reason for the white lights is purification, primarily. Although you do receive cosmic knowledge, universal knowledge, that feeling of being one with everything, which you can also get in an out of body. But this was the white lights. So it's being purified and elevated because in our normal human state, we can't go before our God in an impure way. And it's also helpful for the human to have these after effects. So it's elevated to a high degree. I was purified fully. It was a spiritual shower to prepare me to meet God, which is everyone's inner dream, inner goal or desire, whether they realize it or not. The subconscious desire is to merge back in with where they're from. So everyone innately wants to go back to source and is looking for source or creator, and so was I during each stage of the near death. I go into the white light. It super purifies me, cleanses me, and light, as the scientists tell us, transmits information. So the white light, that's what makes the white light so powerful. The cleansing, the purification, the transmission of information. Um, I get through the white light. Then again, a brief lapse of consciousness. I wake up, but I wake up, Mira, on this circular platform. And as I regain consciousness, I can see beings in the background moving about. And as I focus in on them with that peripheral vision, suddenly right in front of me appeared what we would call God. And it was glossy and glazed over. And I looked at it. And then it knocked me out. And or it knocked me out, but not fully. And I rose back up again to super look at it. Because in those stages, and for me, normally, once I see something, I can fully remember it. And in that out of body state, once you see something and you want to know what it is, you merge with it and feel its essence, identity all at once. And I have a few good examples that I can tell you after. But I looked at this thing twice. The second time, he knocked me out fully. Um, uh, During the first glimpsing of what we would call God, the circular platform that we were on began rotating in the same way that the life review began rotating. One outside band went one way, the other went another way, and that's super important. We can get into that too. Um, so the rotating bands in opposite directions. Um, this thing looked at me, and I looked at him. I tried to see into him. He knocked me out the first time. I rose back up. I was using my will. And then he knocked me out completely. But during those two glimpses, our essences merged together. And this was for the reactivation of my life force. And then I woke up, again, underneath the dock. Something pushed me up out of the dock. And just like a fish, when you have it on the boat and it seems dead, and then you put it back in the water, it swims back around. That's what happened. I woke back up, went up to the top of the dock, choked out buckets full of the lake water, and then crawled out onto the sand. And I was in such shock that all I could do was scrape the muck off of my leg and then kind of get myself together. I didn't tell anyone about that for 10 or 12 years. But I thought about it. No, I fully submerged it. as a lot of people do with heavy psychic experiences, and then began to study it in the 80s. The near death was in 75. By 80, 81, with Oprah, Paul Donahue, and all of them, they started talking about, and the researchers, near death became okay to talk about. Um, and so I started reflecting on it in the 80s while I was developing my then uh, advanced psychic powers from the 80s to the 90s. And in the 90s, I would become this mystic and then be invited to work with Dr. Bruce Grayson, who is the godfather of near-death research. He's the founder of Ionids, all that, a super deep psychiatrist. And so that was the near death.
Okay, awesome. I have some questions for you, Eugene. What did God look and equally important feel like?
Hmm. It's easier with the feeling because it's a lot of times it's said that no man can look at God and live. But I actually heard one time from some old school, a couple of hundreds of years ago, priest or mystic or whatever he was. I read that the actual quote was, no man shall see God and live as man. He'll be elevated." But as far as what he looks like, the vision is purposely blurred because in the esoteric things, it's not necessary to know everything, and we can't know everything, especially on God's level. Our heads would explode. And some people have a hard time handling just psychic experiences. They go over the edge. So, like the psychiatrists and uh, paranormal researchers tell you, you should be fully well balanced before trying these events or having them, if you can, as well balanced as you can, like physically, mentally, uh, intellectually, and spiritually, because you can really go over the edge. And then if the clown takes drugs, that's wild. And no researcher will deal with anyone who had a story that involved drugs or anything like that. No near death, no real near death researcher would. Well, especially Grayson and Atwater, who I work with. But now, you asked, okay, about God. Yes, seeing him is difficult. I tried twice because I always want to see the source or the controller of the experience that I'm in. In the out of body state, you're more free, but there is soft control in this, not the full control of a UFO abduction, which I've had, but a softer control, one that the person would say, "Yes, I want to be controlled by this figure," and you recognize it as God, and you're super happy. That merging with God during the white lights, and when you see Him, is what people dream about, and what will happen as we get through those higher uh, dimensional realms. Um, yeah, so seeing him is difficult. Um, and seeing a lot of things, the truth or reality with what you're looking into is not easy either. Because a lot of spiritual experiences are intertwined with spiritual illusions, as you know. And but with proper focus, like here's a quote: uh, "Concentrated focus combined with advanced meditation produces a merging into things, where one becomes one with one's object of focus." And the outer bodies produce the merging. The merging is where you can go into something and know its essence all at once. Now, here's a good example. Then we'll get back to what he looked like and felt like. The feeling with God was even more vivid and sensory and memorable than the sight. He's not really. He's not going to. We can't know everything, even though we want to. But with emerging quality, uh, I and like I said, it comes out of bodies. So I had a conscious out of body. I popped awake during a snowstorm, and at the exact same time, within the hour that I would have been asleep. So it was snowing one night, about 5 or 10 of 1. I had a spontaneous conscious out of body. I just popped awake in a snowy football field. I was floating in air. And usually in the out of body state, you'll notice anything electric or that sparkles or a light. Because we're made of electricity and light, so we notice those things first. And then it's at night, so you see the lights even more. And so I saw some cars going a few blocks down in the same direction as the football field. So naturally, just instinctively, I decided to race them to see who could win getting to the end of that football field. And I raced them and I floated and soared down the field. And right before I got to the end, I stopped because I sensed and felt that there was something in a little bush that was alive and sentient that was right at the end of the football field. And once I decided I want to know what's in there, I jumped into his body, saw myself from his perspective, and then snapped back into my body within about a half a second. I could see, I could feel his fright, and I could see him looking up at me, which might have been a strange thing to see a human floating down the football field for an animal to see. But I could see that he was afraid, and when I got into my body, I could see that it was just some kind of skunk or rabbit or some kind of animal like that, maybe even a cat. But it was freaked out when it saw me and it saw me invisibly. That was interesting. There's another experience of this merging quality, and that's why I tried to use on God when I wanted to see Him. I wanted to merge into His essence. That He knocked me out, because it would have been possible, but He knocked me out, and you cannot go beyond His control. That's why the scientists call Him the controller. And I'll explain that right after this. So after that, and like I said, the out of bodies bring forth naturally a merging ability. Every time you go another level up in your expertise as a psychic or a mystic, additional psychic powers come on. And with the out of body, those merging abilities come on. So a little time after this, maybe the summertime, that summer of after that winter, I was sitting in my tree watching my son play with his friends down a hill. And in a tree opposite me, about 20 feet away, I saw a squirrel sitting in a tree, and the squirrel was looking right at me. That surprised me. So I looked right at him. And then I shot, without even thinking, I shot into his body, saw myself again from his perspective, and then bounced, snapped right into mine. And so those are two examples of like spontaneous merging. With the skunk, I wanted to see what it was, and with the squirrel, it just happened naturally. And those merging abilities help in the spirit world because they help you to pierce the veils of illusion, and you can see through with concentrated focus and that merging. You can see through the reality of an illusion. You pierce the veil with concentrated focus and that merging. So that's what I tried to do with God. He fully knocked me out. And he knew I would have done it again, so the second time he knocked me out permanently. But as far as feeling, you feel it more. And I could feel that union, that merging, that marriage with God. And that was the highest thing, really, of the near death. Mixing in, partially seeing him in a fogged, a glazed, like how the windows are frosted, a light frost where I couldn't fully see him, but I could see that it was him. Um, but it's not our thing to know everything. He's given us so many good things. We can fly, we can go out of body. Uh, so that was about the seeing and feeling God.
Okay, thank you for that. In
Yeah.
the in the live review room, you said he asked you those three questions. Did he did was there any additional communication there?
Um, I automatically knew when I was forgiven after that stage, although he didn't say it. The red uh, hearts, like these exploding hearts, that red rays went on me. Those were like the rays of forgiveness. And God forgives you before the judgment. That's how good He is. Where as long as you believe in God, you will get in. And depending on the person's level of consciousness that they develop on earth, the same awareness, spiritual awareness they'll have when they're in those dimensions. So it's good to develop all of our full senses, especially those sixth sense, so that you'll be more awake in the spiritual. And you can be fully awake in the out of body by developing the dreams and the breathing exercises. We want to be as spiritually awake as we can, and there's easy ways to do it.
What are some ways to do that, Eugene?
Okay, the first one, as you know, um, is the breathing exercises. We are mainly air, and I saw during the teenage days that the more air that I took in, I would do these holding my breath exercises in class out of boredom. But then at night, out of boredom and to help myself in sports, I would do breathing exercise because I saw that it helped me a lot with jumping, with lifting weights. I knew that the air power made me really strong in sports. So I started doing that every night, not realizing that those same breathings were opening up the barnyard doors to the psychic dimensions. And I did not want to have the out of bodies when I was a kid. I wanted to just be a normal eighth grader, do my thing, play basketball, talk to the girls, go to school. But every night I was forced to have these things. And at age 11, I asked God for them. Because at age 9, I knew that there was an invisible world. So I said to God, and that there was a God in charge of that world. So I prayed to God while walking home for dinner. I said, God, if you show me all the things in that invisible world that no man or king has ever known, I'll always tell people about you. And I forgot about that prayer, but he didn't. And 2 years later, the experiences started happening heavily with the out of bodies.
You mentioned that the rotation was important, and you said you would tell us why. Can you expand on that, the rotation?
That's good. You remembered that, Mira. Very perceptive. Yeah. So with the inner bands and the out of bands, and I'll get my book so you guys can see what I'm talking about. The bands rotated one way, and then the inner band rotated one way, the outer band rotated the opposite way.
You talked about the colors and the significances, like orange represented uh, healing, health
Yes.
wise, the red was ecstasy, and the white was purification. And you also mentioned the body the spirit body becoming less dense as you moved across these colors. So, in terms of the lightness or the energetic qualities of that spirit body, how difficult was it to come back here in this dense body? And also, did you have a choice in terms of coming back, or was it spontaneous?
It was spontaneous and kind of forced back. And just like the other near deaths, I would have loved to have stayed and be in that those higher dimensional realms and just exist as a spiritual being. But I was forced back. I was only 14, and I had made that promise to God, and so He was making sure I kept up with it. And I have, and He has too. So I was forced back. And what was the first part of that question?
Oh, just in terms of the density where you were moving, the body was becoming, spiritual body was becoming less dense.
Just like in the out of body, when you have an out of body and you come in, you can feel the heaviness of uh, of the physical body and also of the astral flight because you're semi awake when it's happening. It takes some energy, but not a lot. But you can feel the difference in the weight and the body density. With the it feels like you're wearing a fat suit when you get back. Um, it doesn't last too long. In the near death, I was a kid. I didn't feel the heaviness too much, but there was a super surge of psychic abilities. And once a person finishes the dream development and get to the out of bodies, they become psychic 24/7. The person generally develops their abilities in the nighttime areas during the sleep and dream stages. The dreams and lucid dreams and falling dreams, which are lucid dreams, produce can produce an out of body. Like one time I was falling. I said, I'm having a falling dream again. I had several until I learned how to maneuver in them. I was falling again. This is like the 60th time, 60th night in a row. So I said, it's that same falling dream. I'm going to let myself fall and not fight it. And when I let myself fall, I began to slow down. And I said, maybe I can fly. When I said fly, I shot up. So I saw as a team that was a thought actuated realm where what we think can happen. If we want to float backwards, we can. If we want to. So I saw that you could control at least yourself in in the out of body state. And when you come back, because of the cosmic residue of having even one out of body or one powerful spiritual dream, when you come back, that cosmic residue makes the person occurrence prone, where they begun to have psychic experiences over and over and over and over. Usually not more than they can handle, but they can be super powerful. Uh, so in my 20s and 30s, I would try to enhance the psychic abilities as much as possible. I was wearing copper. I was wearing silver, which enhances the dream memory. I put quartz crystals underneath my pillow. That's super. If you're having a sticky dream, that super clears out the dream. You can remember two dreams before. A lot of people have several dreams. They might only remember the last part of the last dream. Uh, but those things, and that lasted into the 2000s, where I really didn't need them anymore. Went to a haunted house mirror, to, and I did to drain the haunted house of its electromagnetic energy. 6 months after, 1 month after that, I saw a UFO with my son that came down close to us. It was a spear-shaped UFO. So one, the out of bodies produce can makes the person occurrence prone. We've got psychic experiences over and over and over until either they stop or you master them. But yeah, it's an interesting path to take in life, that psychic spiritual path.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk about the astral plane and aliens for a little bit because you mentioned that as a child you had these psychic experiences, OBEs, then you had your NDE also very young, and encounters. Now, can you talk about one or two that were deeply impactful? And did you encounter any non-humanoids?
Like you would expect, if you have an out of body, a conscious out of body, or you're awake, you would expect that you might see an alien. In that realm, you could literally maybe, most likely think about them, and something would appear. Back then in the 70s, people really didn't. You heard about UFOs, but you didn't think about them, much less calling them in like people do now. They were things to be afraid of back then. Um, but both aspects, the near death and the UFO encounters slash abductions, are both avenues or doors to the same warehouse. That is God's paranormal warehouse. You can get there one way, you can get there the other way. One primal fear, the other primal ecstasy. Even though they're two polar opposites, that's what the UFO abduction and the near death would seem. They seem to be two polar opposites, but they're actually so intertwined that they become, for me, one singular reality. Um, so with the out of bodies, now, there was one, not Ring, but Dr. Raymond Fowler uh, noticed that a connection or a possible connection between out of bodies and alien abductions or UFO encounters. And he was correct. Um, but kind of just like Ring, he strayed from that. Because back then the near death was a big thing. And then in the 90s, the UFOs, late 80s, 89 and past, UFOs would become the big thing. And then the regular people would find out about UFOs and abductions. 2005 to 2012, that's when they came in. Um, but yeah, so there's a thing called an astral abductions, where there's a period of unconsciousness between death and reconsciousness after death. Remember I talked about the 15 to 22 seconds? It is supposed, like in various religions, and they call it the soul interception, where supposedly at the moment of paralyzation, and whenever you're having paralysis and you're fully paralyzed, you're going to have an out of body. That is the signpost, the last signal that an out of body is imminent. And if you let it occur, do not fight the paralyzations and use the breathing exercises to keep your continuity of consciousness, to stay awake during the experience. The breathings, the deep breathings can keep you awake. And after a while, it becomes a muscle reflex where you're doing it no matter what, whether you're sleeping, dreaming, and that. And so you're getting more air, which keeps you more fully awake. And that air also, with the focus, makes you pierce any kind of veil, illusionary veil involved in what you're seeing and what you think you're seeing, because they are heavily intertwined with reality. But that focus and that breathing can help you pierce right through it, where the illusions just fade away. And so there's a thing called an astral abduction. I remember fighting with them. We're kind of slipping into the alien turf, but I remember fighting with them as a kid during these astral abductions. The paralysis would come on. I'd be fully awake or even semi-awake. There's ways where you can break an abduction or break through the paralysis. Here's one way. There's two quick ways. People find, and researchers find, that people who call upon the name of their God or the sun or secondary figure after their God can break free of the paralysis, because those entities jump away. When you even a second before you think about God, they're gone. And so if you call upon God or the under figure of God, you can break free. Right before you say, I'm going to think about it, they're gone. Or right as you think it, they're gone. Things happen automatically in that realm. Um, so the prayer, here's another way. If you feel yourself paralyzed but can't go through it again, as a teen, I had many times where I was paralyzed, about to have the out of body, but did not want to. A lot of times it would happen at 4 o'clock in the morning after I stayed up to try to avoid this thing. Because a lot of times, back then for a kid, it's scary. A lot of times you'll hear machinery cranking while you're being levitated, almost as if someone's cranking you out. There's three types of out of body: a controlled, uncontrolled, and spontaneous. Like runners have spontaneous out of bodies. They'll pop out of their body and they jump back down. So the aliens are fully up to date on our out of body and spiritual processes. And they can control, I went over this with Dr. Jacobs, they can control our levels of consciousness. They can suppress our memory. And the memory in the UFO encounters is suppressed way more heavily than the near death. Even though 1 in 4 don't even remember, the memory is way stronger in the alien abduction. And Dr. J had some feelings about that too. He had a negative view on the aliens. And I saw a lot of his aspects were correct. In fact, Mira, here's an interesting thing. You know how mentioned the scientist and the controller figure that they didn't tell the public about? That same controller figure, whom they call God, there's a parallel controller figure. And I'm saying new stuff here. The same controller in the near death is the same controller in the out of body. And we track the parallels in a lot of different bridges.
I have a question with regards to the void and the astral world. Is there a difference? Is it the same place?
Hmm, that's a good one. Now, the astral world is its own dimensional realm. We can go in it, but a lot of times it primarily exists for the person, like especially if you have a physical out of body. Like an atheist, a lot of times they generally just have an earth plane out of body, where they float above the trees, they see people's houses, they go to their neighbor's house, they go to their uncle's house. Uh, but the believing experiencer will go to higher realms because that whole dimension is based on what you believe and what you intend and why you intend. The void actually is, like PMH said, it's a spiritual dressing room. The void is where, at the moment of death, there's a transformation in our spirit bodies, and there's a transfer of consciousness. And that dark void, that 15 to 22 seconds of total non-existence, is where it happens. The person comes out of their spirit body, takes between 15 and 22 seconds. It starts with paralysis. Paralysis happens at the moment of death, during an onset of an out of body, and during UFO abductions. That's another connection. There's a lot of connectors. So many that I can easily give that one away or the other and not really worried about it. Uh, but the information is deep. Now, okay, the dark void is really a 15 to 22-second period of non-existence where the transformation of consciousness happens and the transfer of consciousness and the transformation of the spirit body happens. If the person were awake, they would fight it. Just like when we have an out of body, we fight to make it not happen or to stay awake. So the person is rendered fully unconscious, so those two things could happen. In the regular out of body mechanics, the person would be freaked out if they were awake and felt themselves coming up out of their body, even though they could see themselves in bed lying asleep without even looking, uh, and hearing the cranking sounds sometimes, or floating above their body, or getting stuck in the room halfway in and halfway out. I've had that happen. You have to think yourself out or picture yourself standing on the sidewalk. It's thought actuated. So the dark void is just a temporary darkness where you're actually, it feels like you're in a velvety cocoon. You know that you exist, but you can't move and are fully paralyzed. It would be like having an eternal coma. Uh, and it's not eternal. That's where that's where we regain consciousness after death through that transfer and that transformation. So that's what the dark void really is. It's a holding cell while we change into our spirit body and the transfer of consciousness happens. Uh, I think I mentioned in our last things with consciousness, there are like seven different, just like with the memory systems. Like I'll name a few. I have lapses in consciousness, deviations in consciousness, changes in consciousness, duality of consciousness. Um, what are some of the others? There are a few more. Maybe I'll look them up. But there's a lot in consciousness and a lot and in the near death. And yeah, it's a heavy thing. Just working in one of those fields, but then working in both. So what was needed with both of them, especially the near-death life, was for a mystic, or actual mystic, to have a profound near-death, remember everything that happened, and then translate those invisible esoteric experiences into language that the world authorities and that normal people would understand. So I wrote it in that way.
Eugene, is there anything that feels important to share that we haven't talked about already?
There's a lot of things. Yeah, I should actually, let me read you a few quotes. Here's a good one. Whenever there is a deviation in your levels of consciousness, this is from the book, whenever there is a deviation in your levels of consciousness, there's also a simultaneous deviation in the physiology of your invisible spirit body. And at the same time, acting as a triad, there is also a corresponding deviation in dimensional space and time. And if you know that, that's all you need to know. Here's another one. Uh, let's see. Here's a good one. Human beings were created by the Creator in such a way that ecstasy is the primary method of conduct/control for sentient beings. Ecstasy, a high spiritual level, is also associated with that process of transformation between life and death. Ecstasy with a near death, control with a UFO, and primal fear.
I have
Yeah,
two questions I ask everyone. What brings you joy and laughter these days?
joy and laughter. Well, I do like a good Lifetime TV movie.
What would you tell young Eugene who is about to embark on this wonderful journey called life?
What would I tell him?
Yeah,
Uh, I would tell him, and I tell people this too, that especially if he were younger than me, and I could give him knowledge from the future, I would tell him that your primary purpose on this earth plane is to find yourself, then find your God within yourself and by yourself. And it's a good path to take. It's a good path to take.
beautiful. What
Mhm.
final message or blessing do you have for those listening?
Upon attainment of the highest spiritual heights, we find that love and the desire to love assures us at last of happiness under the sun. Mhm.
Thank you for being here with me today, Eugene, and thank you for sharing your remarkable NDE with us and your different spiritual experiences as well.
Thanks, Mira. It's good to be a guest on your show.